Okay, hey, today we are on part two of our ecology series. And today we're going to really focus in on ecosystems. And we're going to be talking about some local ecosystems, some ecosystems from around the world, and just what to expect with like what do we define as different ecosystems here. Um, hey, here's a map. There's dozens that look like this that try to depict the major ecosystems in the world. If you look in the Midwest, we're kind of a mix of this temperate forest and temperate grassland. And actually, that mix kind of happens in western Minnesota. That's where the forest gives way to grassland. If we take a look at a more localized map of our ecosystems, maybe you've seen this map before. Sometimes it's on the sign as you enter the state of Minnesota. Sometimes on some DNR things. But these are I always call them three major ecosystems or biomes of Minnesota. Um, some would argue that there's that fourth, the tall grass aspen parkland up in the north. I've always kind of just included that with the coniferous forest and prairie grassland area there. So if you look, we have coniferous forest to the north and to the east. We have this deciduous forest kind of running through the center of the state. And then out in western Minnesota is a prairie grassland. And so that puts the Twin Cities would be more so in this deciduous forest range, but you know that if you go north of the Twin Cities at all, you very quickly enter this coniferous forest zone. We've already talked about this, but just kind of a reminder of what ecosystems are. Remember, ecosystems are going to be all of those living factors that we've been discussing, plus now we're including non-living factors. Okay, that's going to be the big um, addition to what we're going to be looking at. And those non-living factors are going to have a huge impact on what can and can't live there. All right, we're going to go through some and look at different ecosystems. This is Monument Valley in Southwest United States. Um, some of the non-living factors, if you're looking at this, you're probably looking at all those things that are non-living, things like rocks, things like soil quality, the sand. I don't know. It looks hot there. It looks dry, so the humidity um, is would be low. You don't see a lot of water. All of those things. So all of those factors are going to determine what kind of species we're going to see here. We're probably not going to see any trout here. Maybe, maybe there's a stream somewhere, and there's more to the picture that we're not seeing. Um, Probably won't see any moose roaming around or anything like that. And that's going to, that ecosystem has a, sorry, the non-living factors, that ecosystem has a huge role in that. We switch it up here. This is Iguazu Falls. It is in Paraguay slash Brazil, I believe. But anyway, that's the Amazon River that's dumping over. I think it's the widest waterfall in the world. Um, Very different story from our last slide, huh? Maybe it's the same temperature as these two, but now all of a sudden we have water there. And when water is present, that's going to determine a huge number of changes of different species that can and can't live there. As everything's greener here because plants are going to do a lot better with the ample amounts of water. There's probably all kinds of things living in that water. Um, I can already kind of tell if you just envision yourself in these two locations. This one's probably not too buggy. Okay, there's probably not a lot of mosquitoes and things like that flying around. I bet this one's really buggy based on those conditions there. So once again, the additional water probably led to higher soil quality and those kind of things. A very different types of species can live there. Speaking of water, okay, here's a look at a bunch of it. Only it's frozen now in the form of snow. So this is up in the Yukon. All right. And once again, a very different ecosystem here. Here we have plenty of water. There's plenty of trees. There's those kind of things. But the big change here is temperature. Now we're not by the equator. We're further up, closer to the poles. And temperature is a huge factor of what can and can't live here. You all know that in Minnesota that we have species that live here that couldn't live in other places. And there's a ton of different reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals, those kind of things that live down south that could not survive a Minnesota winter. All right. So here's a look. Even notice the trees here are different. The trees are more adapted to the cold. They have the needles instead of the leaves. A nice look at some conifers there. Now here's a look. This is Moraine Lake, I believe, up in Banff National Park in Canada, along the Canadian Rockies. Now here, I want to focus on something that we don't always think about, and that is elevation. All right, as we look at elevation, how high above sea level you are, that's also going to play a huge role in what can and can't live there. If you go, and particularly out west, and you see the Rockies, there's parts of the Rockies that don't have any trees on them. That's because they are at an altitude that is higher than what trees can live at. So some of these peaks, yes, there's not great soil, it's harsh conditions, but physically due to the atmospheric conditions, certain plants can no longer live in those things. I always think it's interesting when you have liquid water and frozen water right next to each other like that, but that is one thing that elevations and geological formations can do to an ecosystem. And then last look here, here's a look at kind of what the south and west of Minnesota would look like if we didn't farm it. I'm down in I'm from the state of Iowa, and this is what the entire state of Iowa would look like before farming started occurring. And that's kind of a savanna, an oak savanna, prairie, whatever you want to call it. Um, Great ecosystems and actually produce some of the most fertile soil in the world. That's why we farm it now. So just look at that last ecosystem there. All right. So the notes here for the day are pretty straightforward. I've been talking about it for all these slides. Those living and non-living factors. We have two more proper terms for them. Okay, the first one is biotic. So biotic factors are living things that can play a role in ecosystems. It could be predator and prey. It could be bacteria. It could be plant life. But they are living things that are going to determine impact how ecosystems function. And then on the last several slides, we were focusing on the second, the abiotic factors. So these would be the non-living factors that are going to affect ecosystems. We talked about temperature, humidity. We did not talk about pH, but that's a big one for aquatic environments, geographical features, pollutants, etc. there. So that's the big takeaway. I got one more slide of notes here, but these ones you probably already know. Just maybe it's a new term for you in describing these things. So when we take yes, the abiotic factors are going to be very important. But in biology, we like to study life. And so we're going to focus a little more heavily on those living factors. Um, you maybe have seen them called like producers, consumers, and decomposers. A more proper term for them are the autotrophs. Those would be your producers, organisms capable of making their own food. And it's not like you guys, heating up a frozen pizza. It is plants that convert sunlight into sugar. You have the heterotrophs. Those are organisms that get their energy by consuming organic matter. That's us. So organisms that have to eat. And then decomposers. So decomposers break down organic material into inorganic material. So think about like all those things when things die and are buried or on the surface, dead leaves or whatnot. Over time, all that organic material starts to break down there. A quick look at those things. Here's some autotrophs. Nice tree. Everyone's favorite algae in the lakes. Heterotrophs. So it doesn't matter if you eat plants or if you eat animals. That's still eating. That's still a heterotroph. And decomposers. All right, we got some bacteria on the left. We had some funguses on the right. So fungi are decomposers. All right, a nice look at a morel mushroom there. So that is our lesson today on how living and non-living factors can play a role in ecosystem development.